Yesterday and over the last couple of days has done what's very hard to do. They walked away from really, really good players and acknowledged, yeah, we worked really hard. We got to a bunch of Super Bowls and NFC championships. We didn't get a trophy, and we're not going to get one with this group. So they let good players go. Kyle Juszczyk's been a Pro Bowler 8 years. Greenlaw, the linebacker. Ward, the corner. Aaron Banks, Hufunga, the safety. Deebo Samuel. They just said, listen, we had a stacked roster. We got close. A bunch. We didn't win. I would have done this last season. I said going into this year, the Cowboys and the Niners, regression was going to begin, and they have both absolutely peaked. So I think they did it a year late, and I think 1 year from now, they have 12 draft picks this year, San Francisco does. And I think next year at this time, Trent Williams, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, maybe Fred Warner are in the same space that these guys they all let go are in. They got bloated, they got loose in negotiations, and the Los Angeles Rams, their primary rival, running a tighter ship, sailed by them. I think signing Deebo and Brandon Ayuk to big deals is a mistake, and they would acknowledge it now. Both guys are talented, but a lot of injuries, and they're chatty. The moral to the San Francisco story. So what's the moral to this? Great quarterbacks win Super Bowls. You can have a very good head coach, Kyle Shanahan. You can have a great roster. Last 5 or 6 years, San Francisco. And you're going to come up empty. The Rams, it's different. Rams had a 2-time Pro Bowl quarterback in Jared Goff, a quarterback that got to the Super Bowl, Jared Goff, and they did not settle. That's why the Brock Purdy negotiations are vital. Garoppolo, not great. One pass, win a Super Bowl, missed. Brock Purdy, smaller, injured a couple times. Not great in inclement weather, which you often get in December and January. So a 6-year run, no trophy, a lot of Super Bowls, conference championship games, stacked roster, great coach, but just good at quarterback. So, and that, to me, that's the moral of the story. And I think San Francisco, there's another opportunity here that they're going to settle at quarterback. For the last guy picked in the 7th round. Not big, not super mobile, not huge arm, more than capable. But I think they've fallen in love with Kyle Shanahan's coaching. McVay is every bit as good as Kyle Shanahan, and he won't settle at quarterback. Andy Reid is better than Shanahan, the coach, and he upgraded from a Pro Bowl quarterback, Alex Smith. So that's the moral to the story. You can have the great coach. You can have the stacked roster. If you're good at quarterback, there's an opportunity here to just have to reboot and rebuild. That's what the Niners are doing. It's not a total rebuild, but I think in 1 year from now, McCaffrey, Trent Williams, George Kittle, I think those guys a year from now, maybe even Fred Warner, who's the best linebacker arguably in football, they'll be moving on as well. So I found yesterday fascinating that, I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again today. What this 2 to 3 day period is, it's about the front offices. It's not necessarily about the players. Everybody's getting overpaid. I mean, Milton Williams signed a contract with New England that's something Aaron Donald should have signed. And it was very predictable as the best defensive tackle on the market. The Eagles letting him go. Eagles are like, you guys overpay him. We're not doing it. You can do that when you're Philadelphia and when you nail your draft picks. And that gets me into the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears are a good news, bad news story over the last 2 days. So let's look at the good news. They have really upgraded on the offensive line, guard, center, guard. I love Joe Thuney. I love Drew Dahlman. Drew Dahlman's arguably the best signing potentially over the last 2 days. Grady Jarrett was on the market. Okay, here's the bad news. So the good news is your O-line and your D-line, they're better. Here's the bad news. Yeah, none of those players were your draft picks. You had to overpay for all of them. And I like some of them a lot. But it tells you, yeah, your GM, the young guy, probably not it. We don't know if your quarterback's it yet. I think he is. We don't know if your head coach is it. I think he probably is. Poorest ownership groups. So right now, the Chicago Bears, even though I love the upgrades, it's a lot of finger crossing and hope and optimism. That's all it is. Go look at Philadelphia's stacked roster, especially their O-lines and D-lines. That's homegrown stuff, overwhelmingly. Look at the Lions' O-line, great front office, mostly their guys. Look at the Kansas City defense, their guys. Look at the Rams' unbelievable defense, cheap, their draft picks. Green Bay, historically, over the last 20 years. New England during the Belichick era, his own line. His draft and development guys with Dante Scarnecchia. The Packers overpaid for a guard yesterday, but historically, they draft and develop offensive lines. So when you got to go buy somebody else's good players, yes, you can absolutely upgrade. I am not denying that. But eventually, you'll pay a price for overpaying for O-line and D-line guys. Remember, guys hit the market. I like Grady Jarrett a lot, but Atlanta's like, we probably got the most out of you. Little age here, getting really expensive, so the Bears have to overpay. I mean, Kansas City moved off Joe Thuney. They're telling you something, and they liked him a lot, but they're telling you deep down, we think probably the peak, the erosion starts now. So I can like what the Bears did, but make no mistake, the best two defenses in the NFL at the end of last year, you could have argued, were like Kansas City, the Rams, and Philadelphia. It is a lot of draft and develop guys. It's not buying somebody else's used car. And there are a lot of good used cars on the market, but you don't know the odometer. Did they toy with it? Did they tweak with it? You don't really know when you go to a used car lot. So San Francisco, hey, you can have a stacked roster. Got to get the quarterback A+, or you're not holding up a trophy. And Chicago, good news, you really upgraded your O&D lines, but that's what you do when you whiff on a bunch of picks. And they did. I mean, you start looking at last year's team for the Bears, who was their pick that was great? Jalen Johnson, the corner, that's their guy. So that's a good story. But, you know, Keenan Allen is somebody else's guy, and DJ Moore is somebody else's guy. And even if you win a trade, on the market, you're overpaying for people. Even the teams, I like what they did in New England. They massively overpaid for a defensive tackle. That's not the way to sustain greatness. The way to do it is the way Detroit's front office, Rams front office, Kansas City's front office, Philadelphia's front office, and you could argue those four teams I just named could be the four favorites next year for the Super Bowl. So there you go. And it's a carousel of quarterbacks bouncing all over the place. And we're kind of waiting for Aaron Rodgers. Yeah,